Welcome to More Than Mindset, the only podcast that bridges the gap between spirituality and success. Go beyond the mind with clarity and confidence coach Kim Guillory and learn how to integrate your passion to serve with your skills and experience to create a business you love. Let's get started.
Hey there, and welcome back to More Than Mindset. Katelyn is my guest today. She has been a client for probably 3 years in business. Also, we do a lot of stuff together in the Mindbody world with coaching. But the thing that we want to talk about today is money, and money for mind, body, energy practitioners specifically. I love working with mind, body workers, coaches, practitioners, energy healers. And one thing we see is a problem in the industry is a lack of business understanding, a judgment about selling and money. And that belief bleeds over to your bottom dollar. And here's the problem. You can't help people if you can't make amends with this money story. So I've decided to start interviewing some of my clients from zero all the way to the big numbers. So we're going to tell Katelyn's story today and just let you know what's possible. How's that sound, Katelyn?
Sounds great.
Okay. So let's talk about where you were when we had that first conversation. So just so you guys know, Katelyn graduated with my son.
Yeah.
So I did know her before she came into to business. And I remember we had a conversation and you were like, that is what I really want. I'm going to do that one day. And you couldn't afford it. And so then I offered you the smaller business package when we first started eSchool. And even that, I don't know if you hadn't invested at that capacity yet, or if you just had never heard of paying that kind of money. So do you want to share like where you were?
Yeah. When I first reached out to you, I had left a teaching career as a preschool teacher in a Catholic school. So I was making like maybe $20,000 a year. I left. I was also recently out of a marriage, so I had all of this scarcity and this fear and this, how am I going to make it? I was in survival mode. And it was COVID. So I didn't want to go back into the classroom and start teaching again. I knew that there was a shift for me at that moment. And so I had finished studying to become an Ayurvedic practitioner. And I was at that launching pad of like, how do I get this? How do I make money out of this? Like, what do I do? And I was watching some things that you were doing. And I was like, I think the integrative mind body coach is what I need to do. Like that's what I reached out for you for. I'm like, this is it. This is really going to help me like get clear on how to launch my business and how to use it. And then you made another offer for me. And the first thing that came to my mind was, there's no way I can afford that. I've got all this debt over my head. I'm barely able to pay my rent, feed myself. I don't even know what I'm doing or where I'm going. And so I like froze. Like even right now, there's like a little tinge of like, money is still so uncomfortable to talk about, Yeah.
The money is really uncomfortable to talk about.
Yeah.
For everyone listening, money is really uncomfortable to talk about until you understand it, the value of it. Money is to be used, not people. Money is to be used. People are to be loved. And that there's a big hang up in this community around money. And that is very painful to watch because I remember I was there. I was you. So Katelyn, let's move forward from that point. I reached back out to you.
Yeah.
And I offered you a price and business coaching in a group instead of just working with me specifically.
Yep.
And even that, you were like, I'm going to do it, but you needed a few months. I remember you needed a few months to start.
Yeah.
So what was your plan, to go save it, to like, what were you thinking?
I was reaching out to my lifeline. So I was like, I know I need to do this but it's like, how am I going to come up with monthly payments to be able to do it? And so I was reaching out for lifelines. Like I reached out to my parents, I reached out to credit card companies to figure out like who could help me, who could be my safety net if what I committed to wasn't working and I needed some support. And so basically my safety net was trust that you're going to make it. Like just take the leap and watch what's going to happen. Just trust. Like that's all you got. Like you have nothing left to lose. Like you've lost it all. And so I sat with it for a little while and contemplated all of that. And then I just took the leap.
Without having the money. I've done that. And it's a very scary thing. I remember I did a crazy expensive weekend thing and I did not have the money and I was going to have to keep paying it after the weekend.
Mm-hmm.
I was like, I don't know if I can do this.
Yeah.
So whenever you said like, I just had to trust. So Katelyn is splenic authority. She's a projector, splenic authority in human design. And you've learned to really trust your intuition. And it has to sometimes override, because let's be honest, a lot of those listening to this are going to reach out to their lifeline and their lifeline doesn't have the money either.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of that is because we take on the habits and beliefs of those mentors and people in our environment, whether it's our parents or other people. And so chances are a lot of that came from there.
Oh yeah, totally.
Okay. So you took the leap and you did it anyway. And at this time, I think we went back and looked at your numbers and you were at $22,000 a year.
A year.
Started working together. And you want to tell us what you were doing to get the 22,000?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, 22,000 a year. I was teaching yoga at a yoga studio, and I was also working with kids as a private tutor behavior therapist.
Okay, and that brought up 22,000.
Mm-hmm.
And what happened next? Can you kind of track the progress from there?
Yeah, so I started off doing I did like the simple business trifecta that you offer, which helped me see how important it is in understanding money and business.
Okay.
And then I did I signed up to do the e-school with you. And then what happened was my beliefs were challenged. My beliefs about money were challenged. And then I was able to see that the beliefs that I had about money came from the environment that I was raised in and the environment that I was brought up in. And I started seeing my beliefs in my family. And then so I started seeing the patterns. And so continuing to challenge those beliefs and feel the discomfort in my physical body as I challenged the beliefs and continued to take those leaps. Because whenever I chose to take that first leap, it was like I had to.
Yeah.
Like it's almost like something was pushing me off. It's like you're gonna die if you don't do this. Like all these wolves chasing after you, they're gonna get you if you don't jump. And that's kind of the sensation that I feel now. It's like I have to keep going. I have to keep doing this because I see the suffering in the world. And it's up to me. I'm here. It's up to me to make this world a better place. One person at a time, so it's like that force that like I have to.
And so let's talk about, so $22,000 a year is approximately $2,000 a month.
Mm-hmm.
So let's talk about your money journey. When did you start seeing by the way, guys, like Katelyn's at $75,000 a year. So it's kind of a big deal. And that's why we're talking about it. I want you to see real live people who have the same fears as you and the same burning desire to serve, where she feels like she has no choice. Like, I have to do this. Yeah. I want to give it all for free. I want every household to understand how to eat for wellness, but I can't get it into that door, into that person, or into that family if I don't have resources. It takes money. Mm-hmm. So when did it start to change? When did it start to show up in your account? That's probably going to be the most important question, because it started to change in your body. It started to change in your mind. Mm-hmm. But when did you actually see, oh my God, like this works. This is working. I'm going to be able to pay this myself. Where was that moment?
Yeah. I would say it probably took close to between 3 to 6 months for me to actually see it. And then where it was like, whoa, people will actually pay for my help. Like what I offer does have value and people are giving me money for it.
What were you thinking before that?
Nobody wants this. Like I can't help people learn how to eat healthy for their bodies. Like this topic of Ayurveda is just too big. Nobody's going to understand it.
We've done a lot of work around that.
Yeah, we have.
That conversation. And I give you the credit. It is your sheer desire and commitment to serve that keeps you in the game. I see how hard it is. I know how hard it is for all of you.
Mm-hmm.
So you start about 3 to 6 months, which, guys, that makes sense. So if you think about it, it takes that first 28 days to have an understanding, like, oh, I see what's happening here. And then it takes that second month or 28 days to start unpacking and understanding it. And then that third is when you actually start taking the real shift, because you can't take the shift when you're trying to figure it out. So that happens at about 90 days. So then you started seeing money in the account. You started realizing people want this. I can do this. I can make it. But you aren't out of like the sphere yet, right?
Mm-mm. Yeah.
You were just excited that someone wanted it.
Yeah. Excited that someone wanted it.
So what kept you in the game at that point? Because you were still reaching to pay month by month.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, what took me out of that was I had this fear of being seen. So I still wanted to hide behind the bush, and still have people like find me. So once I got over the fear of being seen and actually accepted the invitations that I was getting, putting myself out there in different communities and different circles, posting more about my experience and my journey on social media and stuff, was then when I started seeing more money come in, more followers, more people reaching out, more question about like, hey, this really resonates. I think this might be something that will really help me. Trusting also in the fact that trusting myself, like putting myself out there, and then trusting myself, I started seeing the money come in.
How much of the results do you think had to do with like the languaging and learning how to speak, like what we do together, the messaging, clarity on who is your client, what is the problem, like, and for those who just heard her say the simple business trifecta, that's actually free. I'll put the link below and you can just go and grab it. Everyone has to go through it before they get to the point to like start, how you want to say, designing their business to work for them. And so we do give that away to everyone.
Mm-hmm.
So what would you say, like trying to speak a different language, how much was that impacting?
Oh yeah, it was definitely an obstacle that was in the way. And really getting clear on who I was serving and how I wanted to serve them was super important, because I was all over the place everywhere, because I was excited and I was inspired and I was like, I can help anybody with absolutely anything, but I don't know how to tell them that. So getting really clear on who I wanted to serve and how I wanted to serve them and what their end result was going to be.
Mm-hmm.
Was
And
very cool.
what about, can we talk about the resistance to change the language? Like, because I see this with a lot of mind, body, energy healers. They want to speak this newfound understanding, and it's one of the biggest obstacles. And so it's almost like, do you remember that? It was almost like you were cheating on Ayurveda or you were cheating on yoga. And do you want to kind of share how that happened?
It was really hard for me. Because it's like on a spiritual journey, and as you're learning these spiritual lingo and these spiritual practices, like you really rise up, and it's like coming back down to teach people how to embody the spirituality, like how to be a soul and a body. And I really felt like I was doing it not a disservice, but I was taking away the beauty and the spiritual aspect of yoga and Ayurveda by simplifying it. I felt like I was watering it down and not showing the beauty of what it was to those people. And now I see that spoon feeding the people, watering it down, allowing them to taste it, can only bring it in so then they can enjoy the gumbo, right? Like, this is what chicken tastes like. This is what sausage tastes like. This is what onions taste like. And then this is what the gumbo tastes like, right? Going like one little thing at a time. And because what was happening was I was almost like bombing them with all of this information because it was my passion and it was boiling over into me, and they couldn't understand it. They're like, well, I don't really know how I can't access that, is what I was hearing.
And so after hearing that several times, what was your belief around making money as an Ayurveda wellness practitioner?
That it ain't gonna happen.
Ain't gonna happen. And you
There's
didn't really
no way
have
it's gonna happen.
anyone who had done it. So we're always looking for mentors and models who have done what we want to do, but you actually didn't have anyone that
No.
was successfully doing that. So what would you say was the moment that you surrendered to trying something else? Did you have to get to a point where you were so frustrated, or?
Yeah. Yeah, it was almost like I was looking for the path that has already been paved for me. And it was like I had the moment of realization of like, no, you are the pioneer. You have to make the path. So you have to get out there with the machete and create the path because it's not there. And that's going to look different than what you actually think it's going to look like
Mm.
and how I was expecting it to look. Because I came from being a teacher. I had all these mentors and all these models and all of these things to follow because teaching has been around for a really long time. So I had the models, but for here and what I was trying to create, I didn't have anything to follow, so I had to go and create that for myself.
So what would you say was the moment when you realized I can make money? What did that month look like, dollar-wise?
Oh, that was when when I led my first Ayurvedic cleanse,
Okay.
group wise, and that was an $11,000 month. And that's when I was just like, oh my goodness. And then hearing all the feedback from these people when I was able to make Ayurveda so simple for these people to try on for 2 weeks and then really embody and feel what it changed and how it did in their body. And then they paid me for it. And I had my biggest month that I had ever made in my entire life. And I was just like, oh, okay, I guess this does work. And then it led on to more problems.
Of course. So you actually earned half in 1 month. You actually earned half of what you had made the entire year before.
Mhm.
Wow, right?
Yeah.
Really think about that.
Yeah.
From no one will buy this, no one wants this, they're too resistant, it's too hard. Because what were you thinking about the people who were saying no? We're so judgmental, right? Because you were like so desperate to serve them and they got to get it, they're going to die.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I had the belief that people just want to be sick. People don't want to feel better. They don't want this. Mhm.
And then I remember our conversation, you felt so responsible.
So yeah. Oh, it was so heavy. I was devastated. I was devastated.
And it's what our mind thinks. It's like, it doesn't make sense because we believe in it so much. So if someone else doesn't want it, like we really believe some of that stuff that our mind tells us.
Mhm.
And then it's tangled up with, well, I have to do this. God called me to do this. Like, this is my spiritual journey. This is my reason for being on earth.
Yeah.
And that's where that heavy responsibility comes from.
That heavy responsibility. And then that also was like, I had also the belief that if this is my gift and this is part of my spiritual path, then I shouldn't be paying for it. It's a gift from God. Like, why would I be asking someone to pay me for this?
That's a
So
big,
I really had to like wrestle with that one for a minute.
okay. And so you had an $11,000 month.
Mhm.
People think that that's exciting, but let's talk about what really happens when you have an $11,000 to $15,000 month. What's happening inside of you?
Yeah. So then there were more beliefs that needed to be challenged then. It's almost like whenever you're lifting weights, you have in another personal record, then you have like a whole nother problem. And so what came up for me after that was, can you do it again? Like, well, it's not going to be the same next month because you're not running a cleanse again. So you better get and buy everything that you need right now because this money's not coming back.
Yeah. And you believed it
I believed it.
because you had never seen, never experienced, never knew, or you were like not supposed to get too excited and celebrate before.
Mhm.
Which one was it for you?
Um,
What was the
it
danger
was,
of celebrating it?
yeah, the danger in celebrating was if you get too excited and you celebrate, then you're going to be punished because you're not being humble.
Hmm. How'd that feel?
That felt terrible. And because I sat in that belief for a while, my bank account showed it for the next few months.
Yeah, that's what I was
It
going to ask.
was
What
a struggle.
results did you get?
Yeah, it was a struggle. Yeah. And so then it was like, because then I had to get coaching on that because it was like, well, it's actually your belief that's creating that. That's not the truth. It's actually your belief that is creating that.
What did you think was creating it? The market, the people, the
People.
people? Hmm. I ran out of people. I ran
Yeah.
out of people who want to do this. Is
Mhm.
that what it was?
It was a one-time thing. It was just a quickie. Now it's done.
Ah, so interesting. Belief work is tricky and empowering and hard, like because you can't see. You believe it's truth, right?
Mhm.
All right, so we got you all the way to the $11,000 month and then the slump after, which is the vulnerability hangover. And then you just kind of pull away, not to be whatever the story is, not to be shamed or don't get too excited. You can't do it again. And
Mhm.
then you got on a consistent roll. We looked at your numbers. You were pleasantly surprised. Like, so Katelyn's goal for the year, we talk about money, guys, very transparently because it's kind of like I'm going to say something. Maybe I shouldn't say this, but let me paraphrase in case we want to cut it out. But it's like the two things we're most afraid to talk about are the two things of our existence, and that's sex and money.
Mhm.
Like we wouldn't be here without the act of, and we couldn't live here without the means of. And those two things we have been taught like to be ashamed of. And so then when we're hiding it and we're not paying attention to it, it doesn't come because we're not prepared for it. We
Right.
think it's bad. We're pushing it away. So now that you started working through those beliefs and then you accidentally hit your annual goal months
Yeah.
ago, you're like, how did that
Well,
happen?
whoops.
Whoops.
Yeah. Yeah. Um,
What came to mind at
that-
that point? You're like, I'm already at 60,000.
yeah. So there is still like that little tinge of just like, I don't want to say it. Like I didn't even want to tell you guys. Like I didn't want to say it because I was like, because now what?
Mm-hmm.
You know? Like if I celebrate it, is it gonna stop again like it did last time? Is the sky gonna fall? You know, and am I gonna be able to do that again?
Right, right. All right. So let's get on to what do you think was the biggest like benefit or advantage for you to learn? Like if you look back, just think back to the 22,000 all the way up to the 75,000. You're like, okay, this is the year that I make like an average to above income. Your medium household income ends up right around everyone else in your area now,
Mm-hmm.
which is a very normal average income for a household. I think that's so exciting. Like I love looking at it that way. I was like, Katelyn, that's like what men make. And you're like, huh? Yeah, that's what my husband was making when he retired.
Mm-hmm.
And then instantly the mind starts telling stories about all the other things we should have done, or well, I should have more money and I must have done it wrong and all that other crap, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's such a
Yeah.
trickster.
Yeah. A lot of things that my mind says right now, it's like, okay, so that's great. You're making this money, but why are you still in debt?
Hmm.
You know, like where is it?
Why don't you build a house?
Yeah.
Why aren't you?
Why are you still driving the same car you've driven for 12 years, you know?
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah.
So it's like one level or state of being that takes us to the next problems and the
Mhm.
next set of beliefs.
Yeah.
And I know with you personally, I couldn't push too far too fast because you're like really sensitive and you don't like you've got to story around like that being pushed and burnout and having to
Mhm.
do so much in order to get it. But let me just ask you, like, do you feel like you had to sell your soul in order to get that, or did you do it in a sustainable way?
No, I definitely did it in a sustainable way. I didn't push myself. I didn't drive too hard. Um, I maintained my stamina.
Were you
And
in control?
yeah, yeah, yeah. I took the time that I needed because I know I am sensitive and I need to be gentle with myself, otherwise I'm like a mole or a possum. Like I'll crawl into a hole and stay there,
Well,
you
I
know.
think what happens, I don't want to say sensitive in a negative way, but I think what happens is when we have unresolved trauma in our body and that gets
Yeah,
pinged or triggered,
right.
then and it depends on the level of trauma, what that capacity is on if it can shut you down or not.
Mhm.
And so as we are growing a business, we are just working through our unhealed traumas and limited beliefs. And we don't know from one person to the next if that's going to shut them down or not. But I know from working with you kind of how to toy and play and how much we can push and when to pull back and when to slow down. Would you say that that had something to do
Yeah.
with?
Totally. Like, for example, you were really helpful in making my goals, like making sure that I wouldn't make my goals so high so that I couldn't attain them. Because when I make a goal and I can't attain it, then that really like puts me into the hole. I begin to feel like a failure and my mind starts saying other things. So I make a goal high enough that I know I can attain, and then I get it, and then I just bring it up a little bit. That's the way I work. Where there's some people that like make their goal really high and work really hard to get there. I can't work that way. And you help me realize that.
Yeah, it's really understanding how we function,
Hmm.
that we can attain our goals so that we can create the impact in the world that we want to create.
Yeah.
Is there anything that I haven't asked you that, like, plenty of people who were in your position at $20,000 a year, mind, body, energy practitioners, yoga, Ayurveda. I don't know if you know many in Ayurveda, but basically in the healing world and spiritual world,
Hmm.
that you would want them to hear about what you thought before and then how it actually turned out?
Yeah.
What were you afraid of?
Really, I would want them to hear that what they are bringing into the world is so valuable and so important in what we are creating, the world that we are creating. So to trust in that, to trust that this is a gift that God gave you to heal the world and to make this world better. And also that this gift here is to support you. And so valuing yourself and enough to allow the money to flow through, because that is the support that you need to get this gift out.
Let me ask you, to what degree or percentage do you think like coaching, mentoring, strategy, like the work that we do with marketing, promotion, branding, messaging, tactical tech stuff,
Mhm.
when you look at that whole circle of all the thing that's required, because I think that's where we kind of mess up at the beginning, is we think that we just got to go do this one thing and don't realize there's actually about 12 things that you have to do to get to your first 50,000. So when I ask it, you like from that way, if you were like to back up and do a 360, what was most impactful for you to go from 20, like to earn an extra 50,000 a year? What part of it?
Definitely the systems that eSchool helped me put in play. Because I'll say someone as an energy worker and a spiritual healer and all that stuff, playing in the spiritual world is very ungrounding. And so having the systems and the structures in play definitely are my tether to with the structure that needs to come down. So without having all of the structure and the systems that I have in play now, it would be chaos. Like I wouldn't be able to run a business. And I wouldn't be able to play in the spiritual realm like I love to play in, to get all the information to help the people, if I didn't have this structure.
I could see that, because then you'd be fighting for the next dollar, and then you would be in a panicked, anxious state the whole time, and you wouldn't even have opportunity and resource to go and be in these circles and stuff that you love to do.
Right.
What else? So that would be the first thing, is this like business strategy.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah. And then the next thing was being able to rewrite business plans with you yearly, because it's like, okay, that worked this year. This is a little part of this is still working, but this isn't working. So let's revamp that strategy, or I feel like I'm working too hard. Like this is becoming challenging for me. Like, can we reconfigure how this flow is going to work? So it's more of a flow. Like I'm not really trying to make things go. Like I'm in the canoe, just floating on, and my oars are with me. Like I'm not working so hard. It's just happening.
So the business assessments and tweaking, like the chattering part, but with my supervision, like with my, and I guess I want to just be clear about this. Like, do I tell you what to do, or where do we get this information from?
No, I mean, we get the information from what I want. Like you ask such great questions for me to gain clarity on what I see and what I want for my business and what's going to work. And then you give ideas.
Because would it work if someone just told you this works and this is what you need to do?
Not at all. Not at all.
Okay.
Because we all work differently.
Yeah. And what would you say was the third most impactful or beneficial thing that got you from like the earning extra $50,000 a year? So first was systems and strategy.
Mm-hmm. Systems and strategies, and then the assessment. And then, I mean, the weekly calls. Like being able to check in weekly and talk about at that moment in real time, like, wait, this is going on in my business. I need some support. Like, what do I do?
Yeah.
Because there were many times where I'm, even talk to you about it, like, oh my gosh, the money's really difficult. I think I might not be able to stay in this community. And then I'm like, well, whoa, now I'm not going to have any support. Like if something happens and I need to talk about the business plan, or I need some tech support, like I wouldn't have that. So I just keep going. I'm like, well, I got to go work to get another client.
It's like the same trust that got you started keeps you going.
Yeah.
What about, so what I see a lot for, I'm going to say low end earners, is they go to a lot of, it could be groups or other people, and ask for advice, or they're just kind of like looking and complaining about what's going on or what's not happening. And what they find is a lot of information that's not necessarily, like they haven't had an assessment or understand. So what would you say is the danger of just going into, like, just asking anyone for business advice? Because I'm pretty sure you've done that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I did that once and I got so confused.
So for that person who's never had coaching, never done mentoring, has never been in a business container, and they are seeking advice from outsiders, what would you say is the difference between doing that from, getting information or advice from a bunch of different people, compared to someone who's looking out for your best interest and know what your goals are?
Mm-hmm. There's a huge benefit because it's almost like a family. Like you have been in our tribe, like you've been with this tribe. They know you, they've grown with you, they've watched what you've have come through. They know your personality, they know the way you work, so they can give you advice based on what they see, what they've observed, what they've witnessed. And going to someone else who doesn't know that about you is going to give you advice based on what they have seen work for others, or what they have seen work for themselves. Not like, well, Katelyn, you've been doing this and it's been working, so let's just keep doing it. Let's just work through this belief that's telling you it's not. Mm-hmm. Other than this person will be like, okay, well, that's not working for you because they didn't see what I went through.
Yeah. The reason I'm asking you is because I've done this. It is a very expensive lesson, especially if that person hasn't actually done what you want to do, or they can't see the vision that you want to achieve or accomplish. Like, I know what your vision is. It's a big, hairy, bodacious vision. It's like mine is really big. Like, we don't really want to tell everyone that. We want to tell very few people that, because we're at risk of them telling us why it won't work, or telling us other people who have done it and things that have gone maybe sideways. Would you say that's true?
Mhm.
So we're coming to the end here. If there's anything else that you want to mention about your experience, how to go from a struggling to, and I know you're not in the position where you're like, I made it, I'm making it. Like I get that because, that's a whole nother identity shift, but I'm here to tell you that you have, and you are.
Yeah.
So coming from that perspective, if we could go back 3 years and you didn't do this and you would be exactly where you were, what would you have missed out on? Like, where are you now compared to if you hadn't done it? If this ends today, what do you get to keep for yourself? What have you gotten personally that you can survive?
Yeah. Um, Definitely I got that belief in myself. And whatever I put my mind to, I can do it.
So you're walking around empowered in your own potential.
Yeah. And so, like, you're right, I'm not at the place where it's like I have arrived. It's almost like I'm an alien stepping off of a spaceship into this world, and I'm like, is it safe? Am I? It's good?
And we're
And
going to go back and you're going to watch this in a year. Like we're going to go back when you're at 150 and you're going to see you're not even the same identity. Just like if we went back and probably looked at the first podcast or one of the first coaching calls,
yeah.
you are not the same person. You don't think the same. We are constantly reinventing ourselves.
Mhm.
Otherwise, you can't get to the next level. You just keep at the same. But I do want to say that $75,000 a year is a lot of money to most people. Someone listening to this is like, man, I wish I could get to 25.
Mm.
You just forgot.
Mhm.
And so we
Yeah.
do take the time to sit here. So I have a question as we come to the end. If you don't have anything else that I missed that you
Mhm.
would like to share with those that you know in this community, and that would be if you had a time chamber, if you
Yeah.
were going to put a message and bury it somewheres in the land, in the house, in your journal, and it was going to reach 3 generations from where we are today, what would you want them to know about you, believe about you, or have achieved? Like, hey, you remember Katelyn? This is what she did. This is what she believed. This is what she was attempting to do. So I'm going to give you a moment because I didn't prep you for this, but
Mhm.
it's a question that I'm asking even my 8-figure earners.
Mhm.
If you were to look 3 generations from now and they were reading this in a history book or in your journal,
Mhm.
and they were like, that was my aunt, that was my whatever it is, that was my mom's Ayurveda wellness
Mhm.
practitioner.
Mhm.
What
Mhm.
are they saying about you? What did you want? What did you desire? What did you do?
Mhm. That's a great question. Um, so what they would be reading or saying or learning is that Katelyn Sonnier was an ambitious woman who learned about an ancient healing science and wanted to bring it back to life and bring it back into a very hurting world and she made it accessible for everybody. And when it was accessible for everybody, the world began to heal.
Hmm.
Oh, I just got the chills.
Yeah. How scary is it to have such a big, bodacious vision that could impact generations?
It's very scary. It's very scary because it's so wild. Like, even as I'm saying that, on one side of my mind, I'm saying that and I'm in full belief. And the other side is like, yeah, but come on.
Yeah.
So even in my own mind, there's a challenge. And so like the world is also challenging. So it's like I have to stay in alignment with my belief and get checked on my beliefs constantly because they're loud and the world is loud. And that's the only way that I can bring my mission to life, is by staying in alignment with the belief that I have.
Mm. What would life look like if you just like quit on the mission? If you just, I know it's not a negotiable, but if you just thought for a moment, like, screw it, I don't have to do this.
I mean, I would die.
Mm-hmm.
I would die. I would become sick again because I was sick before I started this journey. Like my body would get sick again. I'd probably have to go back and drink a lot of alcohol to numb myself.
Mm-hmm.
You know, yeah, I can't.
Very scary thought, huh?
Yeah, I can't. Like I cannot.
I'm with you. I get it. And I think that's going to be the time capsule story that comes from the soul-led individual. It actually feels like I don't have a choice.
No.
As hard as it is.
Yeah. Yeah. It's almost like we came into this world and God said, this is how you're going to bring my light. And this is what you have to do. But first, you got to be able to look at your own light. And that's hard too.
Yeah.
That's hard.
I think that's why I was like so intrigued by like Joan of Arc. And, you know, she was like, I've got a message. I've got to deliver this message. Like it's no matter what, I've got to do this. I'm just going to do it. It was like, oh my God, because I don't, know much about history and stuff, but something intrigued me to go and listen to that. And I was like, wow, yeah. To be so certain that you don't even have a choice, even though it sounds ridiculous. I think about the iPhone all the time, right? But the fact that that exists.
Right. And I mean, so many times on this journey, like I feel absolutely crazy. Like,
how does having a community that's crazy help that?
Oh, it's so helpful. It's so helpful because I have my family and people are like, why don't you just go back to teaching? Like they need teachers. And I'm like, yeah, no.
You're like, I am teaching. I was talking to my 4-year-old granddaughter, called her for her birthday. And she was talking about being a teacher. And I was like, I'm a teacher. And so I took the camera in here and at the board, and then in the other part of the office and all the chalkboards along the way, where we write stuff out. And then I was like, I never even realized it until this moment. But I was like, I was teaching yoga. I was teaching fitness classes. I was teaching how to make money. I was teaching people how to heal. Like, wow, that's the furthest thing from what I thought I would be.
Mm-hmm.
As a terrible student in school. All right. Thank you for coming on, for sharing your story. And we'll keep you guys updated because like this is a scary journey, and don't think she won't have a vulnerability hangover after we hang up, because she said this and made these big claims here and talked about, and her mind is instantly going to say, yeah, what if you lose it all next year? What if you don't get any clients, right? Like it's gonna for sure. I always check in on them after I do the interviews. Or after they hit a big goal. I was like, let's check in. Let's make sure they're okay. I can't leave them to themselves. That old battered belief system is going to come back. All right, my friend.
Thanks for listening to this episode of More Than Mindset.